The range came alive at 0530. Wind tugged at the flags. Sunlight broke soft over the hills. The smell of oil and cordite still clung from yesterday's runs. Fresh boots scuffed over gravel. Candidates talking louder than necessary. Rifles slung a little too tight. Every movement sharp with effort. She was already there, pushing the magnet cart along the perimeter. Gloves on. Hood up. The back of her jacket read Range MAINT in faded stencil. No nameplate. No rank. Most didn't notice her. Some assumed she was civilian. Maybe local contract. One of the instructors muttered something about her working cleanup between rotations. No one questioned it. She didn't speak, didn't stand out. Except to Morales. He wasn't sure why he noticed her at first. Maybe it was how she walked, not rushed, not slow, just efficient. Each movement with purpose. She carried a small pouch on her belt, patched and worn like it had followed her through more than just supply closets. She didn't interrupt drills, but she was never out of place. When a target fell early, she was already replacing the bracket before the RSO finished radioing it in. When a new guy fumbled a bipod mount, she passed the correct size wrench across the bench, without being asked. No eye contact, no words, just presence. At first, they joked. Carter, second rotation, loud voice, sharp shooter but sharper mouth, leaned over to another candidate and nodded toward her. Wonder if she gets hazard pay for sweeping up our lead. A couple guys chuckled. She didn't look up. She just kept moving. Then Morales saw it. She knelt to clear a jammed mount on the rear barricade. Gloves off for a moment. Sunlight hit the inside of her left forearm. Just above the wrist, half faded in ink. A mark, not regulation. It was old, hand-done. A scope crosshair inked through a pair of wings. Not unit-issued. Not decorative. Personal. Legacy. She pulled the glove back on and moved without pause. But Morales didn't stop watching. Because the stance she used to stand up, elbow tight, hip low, feet staggered, wasn't from janitorial training. It was prone-exit posture. Sniper school, week 3. He'd seen that exact rise before. In a training video labeled Whitaker. But that made no sense. Because Whitaker was gone. And she never made a sound. The next day started cold. Most of the candidates were still half awake when drills began. Morales was already on the spotting glass, eyes sharp, noting wind shift by the flags and brush. He'd learned to watch everything now, not just the targets. She was back, same time, same path, dragging the magnet cart behind her, eyes low, gloves on. Same gloves as before, not range issue, not store-bought. Thumb pads reinforced with stitching only people who reload their own brass ever bother with. She didn't walk like someone who was beneath them. She walked like someone beneath notice. Carter called out again, louder this time, like her silence annoyed him. Someone tell her we're good on cleanup unless she wants to try hitting steel. A few of the guys laughed, then quieted when an instructor looked over. She didn't flinch, didn't glance his way. She just kept walking. It was then Morales noticed the way she checked the steel. Not with her eyes, with her ears. Each time a round rang downrange, she'd pause, tilt her head slightly, and keep moving once the sound cleared. She wasn't avoiding the shots. She was timing them. That's when Morales looked closer. Every step she took avoided brass. Not one shell under her boot. Not one misstep. It wasn't accident. It was pattern recognition. After lunch, one of the spotters fumbled a calibration line. She stepped forward without a word and adjusted the mark herself. Perfect line. Straight through the middle. Marker back in her pouch. Nobody said thank you. But Morales saw it again as she walked away. That same mark on her wrist. Worn but deliberate. A sniper's legacy, inked, not awarded. And the way she gripped the range bag? Trigger finger stayed curled. By Thursday, the air had changed. The drills were tighter. The instructors quieter. But the jokes hadn't stopped. Carter was louder than usual. He'd had a good run. 3 clean hits at 600. Confidence made him careless. She was resetting target mounts near lane 7, crouched low beside a steel plate. Morales watched her run her hand along the edge of the brace, checking for fractures. Nothing flashy, just field smart. That's when Carter stepped in. He laughed too loud and called out across the range. Hey! You missed a spot! She didn't respond. He took a few steps closer, holding out a spent casing like it was a trophy. You gonna sweep this up too, or you just here to spy on the real shooters? A few guys snickered. She stood slowly. Didn't look at him. Didn't take the brass. just adjusted her gloves and turned back toward the equipment bench. Carter wasn't finished. "What, no comeback?" he called. "Figures." Then he muttered just loud enough. "Probably never even pulled a real trigger." This time, Morales stood. He didn't say anything dramatic. Just stepped forward between them, voice low. "That's enough." Carter rolled his eyes. "Relax. It's a joke. She's not laughing." She was already walking away. Same pace. Same calm. But the wind changed then. So did the eyes of the instructors. Walker, the range lead, looked over from the tower. Not angry. Just focused. Later, Morales walked past her bench. She was oiling one of the clamps, hands steady, cloth folded twice. He paused, trying to think of something to say. She didn't look up, but she spoke for the first time. "People always laugh before they recognize the stance." Then silence again. Like the words weren't meant to be answered, just left to settle. Morales couldn't let it go. It wasn't just the mark on her wrist or the way she timed her movements. It was the silence, not nervous, not uncertain, intentional. Like she'd learned to be invisible in places where being seen had a cost. He asked one of the instructors, casually, who she was. Walker didn't look up from his clipboard. "Range maintenance. Contract. Been here a few months." "That's it." Walker paused. "Why?" Morales shrugged. "Just seems like she knows more than she lets on." Walker didn't answer. But his grip on the pen tightened, just slightly. That night, Morales went looking. Nothing in the files under her name, just a first initial and temp assignment. But he checked the old course logs, digging back years, sniper evaluations, marksman prequal rosters. And there it was. A name that kept appearing next to Tier 1 prep courses as a field observer. Initials C. Whitaker. Whitaker. The name didn't hit him at first. Then it did. Jack Whitaker, legendary sniper, instructor of instructors. Morales had watched his tape a dozen times. He'd gone quiet a few years ago. Word was he retired after a field injury. No one had seen him since. But in one line of a 2012 assessment, Morales found something else. Field coaching provided by C. Whitaker, observer certified, Tier 3 sniper, qualified spotter. No rank, no photo. But it clicked. She wasn't just a range hand. She'd trained with him. Maybe more than that. The next morning, Morales arrived early. She was already there, setting chalk lines in the dirt. He approached slowly. "You knew Jack Whitaker?" She didn't turn. But she paused, just long enough. "He raised me," she said, then kept walking. No explanation, no elaboration. But that was enough, because Morales knew what that meant. It happened just after noon. The sun had climbed high, pushing heat off the concrete. The candidates were on water break. Morales stood under the shade canopy, still thinking about what she'd said. "He raised me." Across the yard, she was repairing a torn range flag. Bare hands now. No gloves. The wind kicked up as she climbed the short platform to reattach the cable. Then the SUV rolled in. Black. Government plates. No sound but the tires on gravel. From it stepped a man in uniform. Silver at the collar. Older. Measured gait. You didn't need to ask who he was. His presence said it for him. Commander Harlan, SEAL Oversight Unit. He rarely came to training grounds in person. Walker met him halfway. They spoke briefly. Then Harlan looked toward the range flag tower. And stopped. His eyes narrowed, jaw set. Then, slowly, he started walking toward her. She saw him coming, but didn't move. Didn't climb down. Just watched the line sway in the wind. He stopped at the base. "You shouldn't be here." Her voice was calm. "I'm not in the way. I didn't mean it like that." She descended the ladder and stood in front of him. Dust on her boots. Sweat at her temple. Unbothered. "You're Claire Whitaker," Harlan said quietly. She didn't answer. "You were the ghost coach on Red Sand rotations. The one who tuned Davis's scope before his 1,200-yard. Still nothing." Harlan exhaled. Slowly. Like the weight of something he'd forgotten had just come back. "Jack Whitaker's girl. He didn't teach me to be remembered," she said. "No," Harlan replied. "But he taught us all how to shoot." He reached into his jacket. Pulled something out. A patch. Worn, folded, marked with an old crest. A crosshair inked through a single wing. The original. He placed it on the bench beside her. Then stepped back. Walker, Morales, the other instructors, all watching now. No one spoke. Because suddenly, nothing about her was invisible. and nothing about her presence was accidental. No one laughed the next day. Not Carter. Not the new guys. Not even the instructors who used to nod at her in passing without ever seeing her. She moved the same way she always had, quiet, early, focused. But everything around her was different. People gave her space now, not out of fear, but reverence. Morales noticed it most in the way they started watching her hands. When she adjusted a range marker, they stopped talking. When she walked the line with the magnet cart, they stepped aside. She wasn't commanding it. She just was. At 0900, Walker called for a wind estimation drill. They were 10 minutes in when he pointed to her. No warning, no setup. You, he said. Walk it. She didn't hesitate. She stepped up to the first lane, pulled a strip of survey tape from her pouch, tied it low to the tripod leg, and watched it flutter. Then she spoke. Quarter value from right to left, slight updraft from the treeline. Start at -0.6, adjust half for over travel. Walker didn't correct her. He just nodded. The candidates stared. That wasn't a guess. That was a wind call only a seasoned spotter could make. She handed Morales the tape when she passed by. Use your ears more, she said. They don't blink. He nodded once. From that moment they stopped calling her maintenance. Nobody called her ma'am either. They didn't need a title. They watched her instead, her walk, her judgment, her pauses before she spoke. She became part of their learning, without entering their classroom. Later that afternoon, Carter lingered after drill. Not cocky now. Not loud. He waited until she was folding a tarp near the barricade station. I didn't know who you were, he said. She didn't look up. You don't have to. He hesitated, then nodded, and walked off, slower than he'd arrived. At sundown, Morales saw her walking down the firing line alone. She paused at each bench, checked the bolts, wiped the dust. At the 6th station, she stopped, laid something down, a single brass casing, polished, wrapped in a piece of cloth. Then she turned and walked back into the wind. The next morning, she was gone. No magnet cart, no tarp, no quiet footsteps sweeping across the gravel before the sun broke. Lane 6 sat untouched. The casing she'd left behind was still there, centered on the bench, wrapped in cloth, barely catching the light as the wind pressed over it. Morales noticed first. He didn't panic. He just looked. Checked the shed. Empty. Asked Walker quietly. He just shook his head once. Didn't clock in. Didn't say goodbye. Nobody said she left. But everyone knew she wasn't coming back. Something about the way she moved that last evening, like she'd been walking a final lap without making it obvious. They didn't hold formation. No roll call, no salute. But drills ran quieter. Spotting scopes were steadier. Candidates stood a little longer between shots. By noon, Morales walked over to her bench. He sat on the edge, same way she used to, elbows on his knees, posture low, relaxed but focused. He looked at the casing. There was something tucked into the fold of the cloth now, a slip of paper, slightly yellowed. He opened it gently. 5 words, written in tight block letters. Don't teach. Let them notice. No signature. He folded it and set it back. That afternoon, a new candidate arrived, nervous, fresh out of prequal. Overcompensating. Loud with the instructors. Morales watched from the prone lane. After the kid's third rushed shot, Morales called over softly. Take your time. Listen to the wind. The recruit looked confused. What wind? Morales didn't answer. He just nodded toward the tape tied to the tripod, and waited. When the next shot rang out, clean and centered, Morales didn't smile. He just exhaled, the way she had. From then on, Lane 6 stayed clear. Not roped off, not retired. Just understood. You didn't sit there to rest. You sat there when you were ready to see. The casing remained. Every day, someone checked the bench, not to move it, but to make sure it was still there. The cloth wrap had faded in the sun, corners curled. But the brass stayed bright, as if the range itself refused to let it dull. Nobody spoke about her anymore. But her silence had soaked into the place. You could feel it in the way new candidates slowed when they passed Lane 6. In the way instructors paused mid-briefing and glanced toward that bench like it might remind them of something they'd forgotten. One morning, Morales arrived before the trucks. The range was empty. Sky low and gray. Wind soft but steady from the ridge. He walked down the line and stopped at the bench. There was something new. A washer, dark steel, taped to the butt of the bench with a number etched in marker. -0.6. A wind correction. Simple. Precise. Invisible to most. He sat down, elbows on knees, closed his eyes for a second. There was no statue, no plaque, no folded flag or polished ceremony. But there was this. There was the sling, still looped around the side rail. There was the mark on the cloth. There were the stories no one needed to tell, because they were already in the stance, in the posture, in the pause before the trigger broke. She hadn't trained them. She'd reset something deeper. One by one, others followed. Not to speak, just to sit, to learn the stillness she'd left behind. And somewhere, beyond the berms, beyond the scoped glass, beyond the calls for cold range and hot, she was gone. But not missing. Because every time the wind moved through lane 6 and someone paused to feel it before making their correction, she was there. Not in memory, in form. And the range held it, in silence,